Delta. Delta, the name of the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet.
Since the beginning of time, we have told stories. Older stories were passed down through bards and music, like the story of Beowulf or the Epic of Gilgamesh. No one knows if true, but passed down so long, we consider it to be a metaphor of the truth. Often the things horror movies really exemplify is isolation. So something not being there when it feels it should be, or for something weird. Weird here is in reference to something Mark Fisher stipulated in his book, The Weird and the Eerie, when he wrote that the weird is when something is there that shouldn't be there, and eerie, the absence of something being there. So for horror movies, let us consider sound for a second. Why does audio work for horror movies? Some Buddhist monks or Reiki healers believe that certain frequencies have a healing mechanism, such as a 528 Hz sound, which pretty much just sound like the ringing in our ears at times. As we consider what makes a good horror story, I want to take a closer look at a Spanish series that is currently on Netflix, the Kurlian Frequency.
You're listening to 96.6, the Kirlian Frequency. All night, every night.
The Kurlian Frequency is a series about a town with scary things happening, from vampires to witches to magic and psychosis. We follow the story of a radio DJ who lives in Kirlian. Kirlian is an imaginary town that could really be any town. The series is reminiscent of the book House of Leaves or the Yume Nikki, the video game of a hikikomori. The first episode envelopes you with the creature comfort of a story. The story of the weird, the story of a werewolf.
We heard from the local police, and the creature has finally been captured.
The very fact that this is a mini-show that has the anthological property to it, you can't help but be reminded of The Twilight Zone. The second episode follows a woman's accidental journey into the town.
I want to know why you people think you won't get old. Or die.
And the third episode is about an old lady complaining of some vandals.
We'll keep you all informed of when it's safe for your little devils to go back to school.
The fourth episode is a semi-Christmas episode, probably the most creative of all.
As of this morning, everything ends on the night of April 30th.
Which reminds me kind of of Eternal Darkness. And the last episode they have on Netflix is of an old man and a dog. The old man hears the dog speaking.
He held my hand to keep me from leaving and told me that the dog had stopped barking and started talking.
Similar to David Berkowitz.
What do you want?
I want you to go out and kill.
The son of Sam Killer. Because of the nature of beliefs, and of course because I want to leave a question of doubt, I don't want to give spoilers. And that is all I will say of this show. It has a smooth transition from episode to episode. Each episode exists independent of each other. The Kurlian Frequency does not have great graphics, nor is it extraordinarily amazing to look at, but the selling point is the sound. The ambiance of Vaporwave alongside 80s sounds displaces us to a certain time and place gone. The haunting melodies of the past torment us with a minimalist portrayal of nostalgia, and that missing feeling we had in the past begs us to return to it. There may be a simple explanation of what one could say. They just like the way it sounded. But why would they like the way it sounded is the real question. With things like the occult, sometimes they feel immovable, like an idea that is impermanent.
By observing the fire, by keeping it going, by creating ceremonies around this fire, they became a mystery to the others. A mystery always holds sway over those who don't understand it.
A witch symbolism, which is in reference to something evil we cannot describe, and we ascribe it to a devil, a perfect evil archetype. If you want to watch a show that reminds you of a scary story told to you beside a fire, or late at night, if you're looking for something to pay attention to, and you're missing that sense of weirdness and eeriness in modern movies, try Kurlian Frequency.
Christmas in April, because we probably won't get to May.
In the past, there were seers, psychics, shamans, and prophets, or one would now call them psychotic. They were then called visionaries.
The second idea is they're just mad. They're just nuts. They're crazy.
something's going on in the temporal lobes, they become crazy and they believe in God or believe in something.
A look into temporal lobe epilepsy allows us to speak in terms of religiosity and neuroscience.
The temporal lobe is important because this is the area of the brain that a lot of language is in here. Memory and processing and even emotions come from the temporal lobe.
We don't have to speak of Nostradamus and how he have claimed to have spoken to angels, but we will say how this sort of catatonic behavior claim time into a person and then they obtain a grand vision of God or some sort of holier ideal. It has been decades into neuroscience that temporal lobe epilepsy has been closely coincided with religious seizures in which people claim to see holy images as supernatural things, like God, saints, or the devil.
When I listen to certain types of music, I have this connection with another world almost. And it's very hard to convey it to another person.
Andrew Newberg's description in his neurotheology book tells us how the temporal lobe played a huge role in our ideas. When he writes, suffering relates to the limbic system. The sense of permanence versus impermanence may relate to areas of the temporal lobes, which establish opposites. Speaking in terms of opposites, we can think of good and evil. We can think of darkness and light, absence and presence.
This area lights up, it becomes all red. And that's what helps us to experience enlightenment as one of the most intense experiences that you can possibly have.
A sense of intensity like the surreal reaction we can feel, as though we are in the event occurring, like a sort of neurological connection between you and the character on the screen.
Don't speak to my family right away. To my brother, they will look for me and... What was that?
With music guiding you into meditative states with strings simulating frequencies. There may be no true connection at its current time about audio and horror, but a good story does not need to be seen. It has to be heard.
Is this privatization of stress? It's normalized. Like, the fact that young people are depressed, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit?